G'day guys, my name's Pete and this is Dean. We're both carpentry trainers here at Box Hill Institute, and today we're going to talk to you about install flooring systems. So first thing we're going to do is have a look at some of the tools and equipment that we're going to use today, go through the swims and have a look at the different safety aspects and things to be mindful of, and then we'll jump out into the sand pit and we can have a look at the prac that we're going to complete and give you an idea of what it takes to build a floor. First tool we're going to have a look at is our power saw or battery saw, impact driver, got our hammer, chalk line, square. We've got a couple of levels here. And then when we're installing our stumps in the sand pit, we're going to need our shovel and our sledgehammer.
Just to run through this one a little bit, we've got that is level and that is plumb. So this one's important for making sure that everything is vertical up and down. As Pete mentioned, also our shovel for digging our stump holes, our PPE, which is really important, our hearing protection, our eye protection. You don't want to get chips of wood in your eyes. And our battery operated nail gun is also a very valuable tool. Obviously string lines are important. We need to make sure that everything is straight and level and plumb.
The only other one I wanted to mention is our straight edge we've got here. So we'll use that to run that along the top of our timber members and make sure that they all line up. Before we get stuck into any prac, it's important for us to have a look at our safe work method statement or our swims. So just having a look here, the tasks involved are set out stumps for cutting pegs and saddles. So for that, the hazards might be trips and falls, uneven surfaces, hand injuries from the sledgehammer, eye injuries from split pegs. So we just need to be mindful of what we're working around. We can use high-vis string lines as we've got here, and then make sure that we're wearing our PPE. For different power tools, we've got the risk of electrocution and then obviously cutting ourselves on blades and things like that. It's reduced for us since we're using battery tools rather than corded tools, so we don't have that risk of cutting a lead and then being electrocuted that way, which is great. But just making sure that we cut everything that we cut, we make sure that it's well supported. The other thing we'll do to avoid electrocution, even for our chargers and anything that we're going to plug into the power, is use an RCD or a residual current device. Just a electrical device that has a safety switch in it. So if at any point a lead is cut or damaged in any way, it'll turn the power off like that and stop anyone from getting harmed. We're going to be using the shovel to dig some holes to install our stump holes. So they're going to be a hazard in themselves, falling into them. So make sure we're well aware of those. Just make sure that other people that are in the area are aware that there's going to be some tripping hazards. While we're installing our stumps, back injury, foot injury, so just make sure we're using correct manual handling and team lift if necessary. So the stumps we're going to be using today, we're going to be using just timber stumps. But when you're out on site, it's fairly common for them to be concrete stumps, which are obviously quite a little bit heavier. So just make sure that when you are using those on site, 2-person lift all the time, and that'll save you back.
It's absolutely worth mentioning that there are a lot of hazards when we're doing this sort of stuff, and we can control those hazards quite effectively, working together, working as a team, and not doing more than what our body's capable of doing. Slips are a fairly common one. Cutting and fitting materials there, we've got manual handling issues, and also we need to be making sure we're wearing our PPE so we don't get splinters in our eyes. That pretty much covers our safe work method statement for install flooring systems.
Beautiful, ready to get into it. All right, guys, here we are in the sand pit. So you can see there's already a bit of work that's been done. Lucky for us, we've only got a little bit more to go. So the first thing we need to do is do our set out. So the set out for this job has already been done. And so that's where you can see like the string line I've got here. We'll use hurdles to put our string lines all the way around the external walls. And then for when you're doing bearers as well, it's really handy to put extra string lines along the lines of where your stumps are going to go so you can keep them all nice in line. So just having a look at our plans, we've got everything worked out and we've double checked them to make sure that we've referenced our plans and make sure this is all going to be to the right size that we need it to be for our prac.
At this stage here, it's most important that we're digging our holes in the correct locations and that we're digging them to the correct depth and that they're at the correct spacing. And it's also really important, as Pete mentioned, with this string line here, all our stumps need to line up because our line of our bearer is going to follow the line of those stumps. On a real job, you're pouring concrete, there's a lot going on in this area. So you need to make sure that we have accurate marks to work to and everything is at the correct height.
Our stump for these plans, I believe it's 400 into the ground. So we want to make sure we dig our stump holes at least 400 deep so our stump can go 400 into the ground. Above the ground, we want a minimum of 400 of the stump sticking out. And the reason why that is when our bearer goes on afterwards, we need to have 400 mil clearance from the underside of the bearer to the ground. So in a residential building, the reason for that is to make sure that there's enough room to get airflow.
Now that Pete's got that in the right spot, I'm going to throw a little bit of our spoil back in around this.
So this part here, this is where you'd be putting in a bit of concrete just up to the height. Wonderful. We've got one more stump to chuck in, and then we can move on to bearers. So you can see where I want it to finish up. On that string line, perfect for height, and then perfect for in line with the other stumps. Check it with the level and make sure it's nice and plumb. Any small corrections that need to be made on the stump, putting a bit of pressure with that spoil on the other side and just pushing it into place. All right, so we've done our stumps, that's all finished, and we've started cutting in our bearers. So we've got our bearers all laid out here. So we've got a few more to cut, and we'll show you a few different ways of joining your bearers. The most important thing about joining your bearers is that it's done over a stump, so it's well supported, both ends of it. You'll notice our bearers all laid out in the same direction. So it's generally, the bearers will run that longer length of the building. That's the way the bearers will run. And then that also means that our joists will run the other way. And then if you were doing floorboards, then the floorboards will end up running the same way as the bearers. All right, so we've got our bearers laid out here. And so for this one, we're just going to join it with a butt join. So it's important for all bearers, no matter how you're joining them, is that they're joined over a stump. So you can see this one here. I've got that line coming through there. That's where I'm going to cut it, and it's center of the stump. So that way, this section of bearer and then the next piece are both well supported by the stump. All right, I'm going to chop this next bearer. So for what we're using for bearers is just some 90-35 doubled up, and we'll use that on edge. So first thing I'm going to do before I cut this next bearer is screw it together. Got my hearing protection on, because impact drivers can be quite noisy. So 29.45 was my measurement. All right, so we've cut our bearers. They're all to right length, and we've joined them over a stump. So you can see this one here is just a butt join. So nice and easy, 2 square cuts, and just join them both half on over the center of our stump. We've got a bit of Malfoy or damp-proof course underneath there. So the idea of that is to stop moisture from traveling up through the ground and getting into our timber members, so our bearer. This other stump over here, exactly the same setup, except a slightly different join, and that's called a scarf join. So all I've done there is cut it on the angle and then join that up. Same thing, still half on and over the center of the stump. The benefit of the scarf join is it makes it easier for you to be able to fix the bearers together through in on an angle. All right, we're ready to start fixing our bearers down to the stumps. So I'm going to use our nail gun here. So really important, I've got my safety glasses on and hearing protection as well. I've got my earmuffs on. Dean, have you got yours?
Well, no, I don't, because I've got another type of hearing protection here, which is a foam earplug, and that we're wearing the correct clothes, of course, and our safety boots. So yeah, PP is very important. It's always going to be important. It's never going to go away.
For a lot of different applications, you can use nails or screws, but it'll all depend on the products that you're using specifically. So just make sure you always check your plans, specifications, and the Australian standards. All right, that's all done. Next step we can start having a look at is doing our layout for our joists.
What we would do here is we would start marking from the outside. Now, no, I'm always going to have a joist on the outside corner here. So I'm going to mark my first spacing there, and I'm going to come along 450 millimeters, and I'm going to put a line here. And what I'm going to do then is on the side of the line I want the timber to be on, I'm going to put a little cross, okay? Now that's really important, because if I just put a line there, we don't know which side of the line our timber's supposed to be on. It's supposed to be on the left and the right. If it's on the wrong side, it's going to throw our spacings out. We know that 450 plus 450 is 900. So I'm going to mark 900 there. My next one is 1350. And then 1800. All right, so we're just going in multiples of 450 millimeters. Okay. Now, if Pete is doing that at the other end, what we do then is once we've got all those marked out all the way to the end, then we would get our chalk line and we would string our chalk line between this one and that one, and we would ping that chalk line.
Oh, good. So we've got the ends right. It's now we just need to get these intermediate ones, the internal ones. So we're going to use our chalk line and that'll flicker through, and that's going to make sure that the lines that we're putting our joists are dead straight. So now it's time for us to get our joists down and just making sure that they're all on the right side of the line. And we're going to fix those down with our nail guns. Just before we bring some yellow tongue flooring over here, we want to flick ourselves a nice straight line so that all of our sheets go on nice and straight. So if I hook my tape on here and go 800 mil and give myself a mark there, we can then flick a nice straight line in between those 2 points. All good there?
Yep.
That's given us a line on every single joist. And so now we can go along, start laying our first row of sheets off to that line. Once you've got your first one down nice and straight, every other row is just going to lock into that and it's all going to be nice and straight. Here's a few different examples of what type of flooring you could put on top of this floor. So our standard, mostly used in the industry for a floor like this, would be our yellow tongue. And it's called yellow tongue because you can see the yellow color on there, and it's a tongue and groove style flooring. So it has a plastic yellow tongue that can go on either side. We've flicked our line out here, so we've got our perfect position for us to start laying these sheets. So what you would do now, get one corner perfect. This one here is right on my line there, and you would fix that side off there. And then you could make some adjustments for Dean's end there and fix that off as well. So platform flooring, meaning that it spans, and we'd cover this whole floor with that there. This type of flooring needs to be joined over a joist, like most others. So it needs to have that support on the join. So if you are going to do a large floor of this, as you do, you set out, these sheets are 3.6 long. 3.6 also works for our 450 spacing of our joists. So if you set out correctly, you should already have a joist land exactly half on for where your sheet finishes. So that works out really well there. So our yellow tongue flooring is for general use throughout the whole house. If we were coming to use a wet area, we could use the Sky-On flooring. So our Sky-On flooring is this product here. You can see it's very, very similar in shape, tongue and groove. They can fit together and work together, but the Sky-On flooring is made out of a cement sheet product. So the main thing to think about whenever you're working with a cement sheet product is the safety issues and safety hazards that go along with it. The main one of them being silica. So whenever you cut cement sheet products, they release silica dust, and when you inhale that, it goes into your lungs, and it can cause silicosis, and which can lead to death. So had all issues with asbestos in the past, and still asbestos is an issue now because it still remains in buildings. So this is the next product that they made after asbestos and go, no, this one will be okay. But actually, as it turns out, it's still probably just as bad. So if you're ever cutting Sky-On, just make sure that you read the manufacturer's instructions and do everything you can to protect yourself, whether that means PPE, dust extraction, and using the correct cutting tool. The last bit of flooring that we have over here is just some tongue and groove pine flooring. So you can see, same thing, all of our flooring systems, tongue and groove, and they all interlock into each other. Most common you're going to have is the yellow tongue flooring, and our Sky-On is what we're going to use for wet areas such as bathrooms and even outdoor purposes like on a balcony and things like that. All right, guys, so we've installed our stumps, bearers, we've marked out our bearers, we've installed our joists, and we've shown you 3 different types of flooring that you could use on this project. One thing that I really want to reiterate is just make sure, depending on what material you're using, whether it be a different type of flooring, a different size, timber member, and all those sorts of things, that you're always working within the limits of that product. So if you're using 90-35 and you have a look at your plans and it says that can only span 1800, then make sure that you don't exceed that. And same thing, if you upsize it or change what you're doing, make sure you're always referring back to Australian standards or the manufacturer's specifications, and you're not going outside the limitations of your products.
Make sure we're using the correct material in the correct area. A lot of these floor coverings here will deteriorate quite rapidly in a wet environment, so we use our Sky-On flooring in our wet areas. Our pine flooring or hardwood strip flooring can be used like this, or it can be used over the top of our yellow tongue flooring to give you an extra thick floor, which is really good for heat retention in your house. Just make sure that we keep checking all of our measurements and making sure that we're all working off the plans and observing all of our safety procedures as we go and wearing our PPE, and you'll come up with a good quality job.
Awesome. Thank you very much for watching.